When the new coronavirus first arrived in Israel, my youngest daughter fell sick. She had fever which rose and fell every day. We don't like to run to the doctor immediately, but I felt she was struggling. On a trip to town, the effort of scooting her pushbike up a gentle incline overwhelmed her, and with profuse tears she refused to press forward. I started to be concerned about her cough and her breathing. A friend called me to urge me to test her for the new coronavirus. At the same time, my son's asthma flared up terribly. I was sure that our family had been struck by COVID-19. We took our daughter to a medical care unit and found that she had a bad case of pneumonia. But corona tests were hardly being conducted in Israel at the time, and she was not tested. My son struggled on with his asthma for a month or more. I walked around with the children in town, sometimes feeling terrible that I might be exposing others to a dangerous virus. I felt afraid, guilty. The months rolled on, and the death rate did not increase exponentially as we'd expected it would. Children, it seemed, were not falling prey to the virus as we had feared. Several old people in their 90s in Nahariya recovered well from COVID-19. We looked around us. None of the residents of our apartment block had lost their lives. None of our friends had died or even suffered the loss of their loved ones. Only towards the end of the year, we heard of the death of the mother of an acquaintance of ours. Yet the country went through months of strict lockdowns. Small businesses were ruined, schools closed, and religious gatherings terminated, all according to the advice of the World Health Organization, which was now introducing their recommendations for economic shutdown all over the globe. Throughout the year, we heard encouraging reports from the US of the successful treatment of COVID patients with hydroxychloroquine. A Christian Texas doctor gave an interview describing a remarkable cure he had found to be effective in even the oldest and sickest of his COVID patients: inhaled budesonide. It stops the cytokine storm, he said, and he positively affirmed that it is a cure. Reports began rolling in from an Australian doctor that ivermectin was curing his COVID patients. Australian Professor Thomas Borody states, "No trial has shown ivermectin-based therapy to be ineffective. In fact, international data reports an almost 100% cure rate and a symptom improvement within 4 to 6 days." YouTube began removing the videos of doctors promoting these COVID cures. The renowned medical journal, The Lancet, published a study condemning the use of hydroxychloroquine in the treatment of COVID-19. It was subsequently discovered that the Lancet study was fraudulent, and that publication was forced to recall the article. But the damage was already done, and doctors promoting these effective COVID treatments ran the risk of losing their medical licenses if they dared to speak out in their favor. The world was not to run after the discoveries of independent doctors, but to follow the counsel and dictates of the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum. What medical expertise was honestly represented by these governing bodies, I don't know. But what was sure, we were to await the production of a COVID vaccine. But wait, we learned that Bill Gates is the main economic contributor to the World Health Organization. We also learned that he is a large shareholder of Pfizer and Moderna, the main COVID-19 vaccine producers. As 2020 progressed, it seemed the world was turning to Bill Gates to advise us what to do and what policies to enforce. He had indeed predicted the outbreak of the virus in uncanny detail, erring only in the number of casualties, which he had vastly overestimated. Interviewers asked Bill Gates, what must we do in order to restore normality? The vaccine was his answer. In one interview, he admitted that the vaccine industry was the best investment he had ever made. It had given him a 20-fold return on his investment, he said, laughing joyfully. Here in Israel, the Ministry of Health signed an agreement with Pfizer agreeing to submit the population of the nation of Israel for the purpose of medical experimentation with the new Pfizer vaccine, which had not had time for the usual animal and limited human medical trials usual for a new vaccine. The situation was so urgent, we were told, that there was no time for such formalities. We must take responsibility, the healthcare system told us, and all be vaccinated. The Israeli agreement with Pfizer gave Israel's commitment that sufficient of the Israeli population would be vaccinated in order to test whether we can arrive at herd immunity. The percentage is unknown and unstated. Now that the majority of the Israeli adult population has been coerced into already receiving the vaccination, and yet the percentage has not been reached, politicians are turning their eyes to the children. Children are still not at significant risk of dying from COVID-19. The media has tried to sow fear by reporting that the children's corona wards are full. Doctors have pointed out, though, that this is because children arrive at the hospital with a broken arm or leg, receive a compulsory corona test, and are found positive, even though they have no corona symptoms, and are consequently placed in a corona ward. So now we are expected to vaccinate our children with an insufficiently tested vaccine in order to protect our vulnerable population, the weak and over 70s. Were children ever put in the front line of battle before? Should their well-being be risked when there never was a serious risk to them to protect our elderly? For the whole of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, before the commencement of vaccination, Israel reported around 3,300 COVID deaths. We know personally of deaths that were definitely not corona-related and yet were recorded as corona-related for whatever reason. So this figure is most probably larger than the real number of COVID deaths. Since the speedy vaccination rollout, within 2 months, Israel has reported 2,500 COVID deaths. Deaths of both vaccinated and unvaccinated. Some received the vaccination and then contracted corona and died. We do not know whether these deaths might be directly related to the vaccination itself. Among the unvaccinated deaths, it seems there are a number who had contracted corona from a vaccinated person. We do not know whether these deaths might be indirectly related to the vaccination. Apart from corona deaths, there have been a number of deaths without apparent cause among vaccinated people. We were in hysteria over the relatively few corona-related deaths last year and ground the country to a halt in response. But these vaccination-related deaths are apparently insignificant and should not hinder the outworking of the Israeli agreement with Pfizer. We must close our eyes and offer up our children for the greater good of the community, or of Bill Gates' wallet, perhaps. Where are we headed now? Will the rollout of children's vaccinations succeed, or will public outcry manage to stop this experiment? Please, let us know what you think in the comments below.